So, Sean, let's talk about this because, particularly with the victory of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but also we heard from Mark Pocan on this, a Democratic congressman from Wisconsin, and more. And you can tell us this, but this adoption. Slow adoption, but creeping adoption, one I know that you have been pushing significantly, of the idea of abolishing ICE is beginning to pick up some traction. Now, aside from what people know about what ICE has been involved in literally the kidnapping of thousands of children who came here under legal guidelines of asylum. First, tell us, what does it mean when you say abolish ICE? When we hear someone say abolish ICE, what does that mean?
To me, what abolish ICE means is the United States ends its mass deportation apparatus. The idea that what are fundamentally civil violations, being in this country without documentation is a civil violation, are being enforced with, Gestapo-like tactics should terrify every American. The fact that ICE is currently holding a journalist who is critical of the agency in indefinite detention should be terrifying to Americans. The fact that ICE has held women in solitary confinement to get them to recant credible allegations of sexual assault in ICE detention facilities should terrify Americans. And we can imagine an immigration system that is different. And there really is no reason to enforce immigration law in this way, unless you are trying to terrorize communities and unless you are engaged in a systematic campaign of ethnic cleansing. And ICE, it came about, within the last 2 decades. If you're over 16, you're older than ICE. And it was contested at the time. There were many Democrats who voted against ICE because they did not believe that we should house immigration enforcement under the Department of Homeland Security, because fundamentally what the signal that sends is we view immigrants as a terrorist threat. They are a threat, they are criminal, they are dangerous. And we need to instead have an immigration system that views immigrants first and foremost as people.
All right. Well, so I want because there's a lot of things that are packed into there. One is sort of like broader policy issues. Some are sort of like how policies are executed. But let's just start with the most fundamental one, the most sort of, I guess, closely hewn to ICE as it is constituted now. Like you say, this is an organization that did not exist prior to the early 2000s. I think it was 2002, 2003, when the Department of Homeland Security was established. And these functions of different immigration services were brought under the rubric of national security. Whereas before it was just simply, it was one of the functions of a federal government. You deal with people who are visiting this country, with people who want to become citizens of this country, et cetera, et cetera. Now, clearly there should be a national security component, perhaps to our borders. I mean, you don't want somebody driving a tank through there, right? Or somebody bringing in a dirty bomb or something like that. But we all know the 9/11 attackers were all here legally. And we all know that Timothy McVeigh, when he blew up 300 federal workers, 250 some odd, he was a natural born citizen. So, there's their threats to the country come in a myriad of flavors, but there's nothing specifically unique about people who will be coming in at the border. But let's talk about this part about the journalists that they're holding. I am aware I've spoken to a comedian who tweeted out something about ICE and then got an unscheduled visit at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning from 4 ICE officials, basically saying, "Hey, watch what you're doing, buddy." Which is a really creepy concept. And presumably if it happened to this guy, it could have happened to others. We also know that ICE is, they are extrajudicial in some respects. I mean, part of this is an organization that is, and look, we have agencies that are run well and agencies that are run poorly.
Yeah.
And we have agencies that are constructed and stay within their lane, and other ones that seem to go rogue. And would you describe ICE as a rogue agency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the strongest argument for abolishing ICE is that you simply cannot have the current people who are in ICE enforcing immigration law. And that's going to be a problem under a Republican or a Democratic president. If you look at, overwhelmingly the ICE union and the CBP union would support Trump, and they have explicitly targeted activists. They have hunted down people who have given quotes to the media. And most recently, there was a mayor of Oakland named Libby Shea, and she sort of gave her constituents a forewarning about an ICE raid. ICE picked up, we now know from internal communications, picked up exactly the number of people they expected. And then after the fact, created a false narrative that she had somehow let criminals get loose for the sole purpose of undermining the legitimacy and authority of a democratically elected politician. I mean, I know that Jonathan Chait believes that fascism will come to America through political correctness on campus. But if you look at the way that ICE is acting, it is very hard not to think that the way that the fascism comes to this country is through this rogue immigration ethnic cleansing task force.
It really is stunning, and we're hearing of greater and greater abuses where they're heading on to buses, where they are extending their power. They're refusing to show warrants when they go to homes. They're pretending that they're police. They are stopping cars. There was reports of them stopping cars on highways and just doing paper checks of people. And it's unclear to me that they have this type of authority. I mean, do we have a sense of what their limitations are as quasi police officers?
Right. I mean, this gets to the heart of the matter, which is we have many different sort of categories of crime in this country, and we we have very different types of sort of things that are against the law in this country, or statutes and such like things. And then we have very different ways of enforcing them. We do not enforce speeding tickets by having SWAT teams go after you, right? It's a civil process. We do not enforce financial crimes through a militarized police force, because the people who do financial crimes are wealthy and white. And so this is the sort of problem with ICE, which is that it has an authority to do enforcement that is already far beyond what is necessary for immigration offenses. And then it goes beyond that authority, and it took candidates like Ocasio-Cortez saying we should abolish ICE to get Democrats to even begin introducing legislation that would meaningfully create oversight capacities for this agency.
All right. I want to take a break here. And you brought up Ocasio-Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who beat out Joe Crowley in New York's 14th congressional district. I want to talk about her, and I want to talk about the others. How this how a position on an issue like abolish ICE moves from an activist position into the mainstream of the Democratic Party. I don't think that position is there yet, but it is certainly moved off of the sidelines, and it's more or less in the game. I want to talk about that because I think there's a lot of lessons, and there's probably a lot of other issues that need to follow a similar path. We got to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. I'm talking to Sean McElwee about his piece in The Nation magazine, It's Time to Abolish ICE.